This is AJ with the Blue to Green podcast. Today, I'm sitting here with Nick Frederickson and Brandon Richardson. Now, today's topic, we are talking about the cannabis industry. We are talking about unionization of the cannabis industry. We are talking about what is going on in the Arizona cannabis space. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Brandon for just a couple moments to just give a brief introduction as to who you are, what you're doing in the space, where you work, because it's a little interesting, especially for me. And then we'll move on from there. So If you could, please.
I'm Brandon Richardson. I've been with Curaleaf for 4 years now. And I'm currently the residing shop steward in the store with UFCW 99.
And just real quick, could you just give a brief definition as to what a shop steward means in regards to regarding a corporate cannabis company and a labor union?
I'm basically the middleman for everybody in that store, the eyes and the ears. So if anything's going down, I get in touch with the people that need the assistance and connect them with the reps at UFCW 99 to help out.
Okay. Nick, please give us an introduction.
Thank you. And thank you for having us on, AJ. My name is Nick Frederickson. I was credited as one of the first workers to organize a cannabis dispensary in Arizona's history. I am credited with helping lead the first cannabis worker strike in the state of Arizona. I've also successfully taken Curaleaf to the NLRB and won my case with the administrative law judge, ordering full reinstatement and back pay.
NLRB being?
The National Labor Relations Board, which is the federal agency that governs labor relations in the country.
You are the one that is responsible for getting unionization a thing here in the state of Arizona.
One of the people, yes. I was part of that original crew. And I am also the executive director and president of Arizona Works United, a political action committee dedicated to strengthening labor laws in the state of Arizona across all industries.
How does that labor organization, how does that fit in as far as a union? It's not a union.
No.
It's more of a lobbying sort of thing, correct?
Yes. So a political action committee is an organization essentially that donates money to political campaigns. We oppose candidates we believe would be bad for labor. We work down at the Capitol with lawmakers to get different legislative measures passed, different things that we would believe should be passed, and we're down there also opposing things we believe should not be passed.
Is it partisan?
We are bipartisan, so my organization is made up of people from both sides. However, we are currently trying to target the independent and conservative voter, as we see there is a noticeable gap between them and labor unions and labor in general.
So, on that note, in regards to labor unions, in regards to the conservative side of the house, we spoke a little bit earlier about the fact that, I have been a conservative most of my life, which is very much shifting. But unions in the state of Arizona used to not mean anything. It used to not be anything. So we had a little conversation offline before this started about the difference between at will and right to work. Oh, real quick, Brandon forgot to mention one of his titles.
I'm the communication directors of Arizona Work United.
There you go.
So it's all new to me.
It's all right, man. It's all right. But you are part of that political action committee. So so I want to set some definitions real quick, Nick, if you could, at the difference between between right to work and at will.
So the right to work aspect in our state's constitution only affects unionized workforces, and it is simply a mandate that employers cannot make membership of a union a requirement to work there. Essentially, they cannot have a closed shop. A closed shop is essentially when you go apply at, let's say, a steel factory. In a lot of states, if you want to work there after a certain amount of days, 90, 120, whatever the probationary period would be, you're required by both the union and the employer to sign up to pay union dues. In the state of Arizona, the right to work is enshrined in our Constitution, and actually there was a huge misconception out there that unions were not big in Arizona. Arizona has a very rich labor history, and the right to work, even though the statehood was given to us back in 1912.
Yeah, 19. Oh my God, we should all know this. We should all know
It's
this.
February of 1912, from what I remember.
Valentine's Day, 1912. Yes.
It's supposed to be before Valentine's Day, but they pushed it off. I forget the reasoning. But the right to work aspect of our Constitution was not actually voted in and enshrined in our Constitution until the 1940s.
Okay.
So for a good 20, 30 years, the copper mines had a strong labor union presence in this state. But over the decades, we had incidents like the Bisbee deportations. That was an action taken by a bunch of company men, or as we like to call them, union busters. And they essentially kidnapped, and I might be butchering the number, but it's roughly 500 to 1,000 workers and their families, drove them across state lines, dropped them off in, I believe, the Nevada desert, and told them do not cross state lines again.
Because they were union.
Because they were union.
Okay.
And it was actions like that that eroded the strength of unions across the state of Arizona. And then, of course, it all culminated with the right to work aspect being enshrined in our Constitution.
Brandon, I wanted to touch on something that you, like I said, we spoke a little bit about offline, about when you first met Nick working at Curaleaf, and kind of what your mindset was about when you were approached about what this union stuff.
Yeah, I was completely new to the cannabis industry. I was just trying to get a new job or a new career option. Nick approached me when I first started working there to let me know about UFCW 99 and how they're trying to unionize the store, and the vote was coming up. At first, I was a little hesitant because I like to do my research before I jump into anything. So I told him I'd get back to him on it. I did my research. About a week or so later, I told him, I'm in. I'm all about this. It's just going to make the place better. So,
And you had no unionization before or anything like that?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
Okay.
So none whatsoever.
And frankly, neither did I, AJ. In fact, most of my life, because I didn't have a whole lot of family members that were in unions, and I grew up and had more of a conservative view at the time that I started the movement.
Be proud of that.
It was definitely...
Be proud of that.
Thank you. And it was definitely an eye-opening experience for me, going from basically anti-union to being the leader of the new labor movement, essentially.
So on that note, you just said the anti-union movement, and as I told both of you before, that like I had no experience with unions. In my professional life as a police officer, I was a part of 2 unions that were not in fact unions. So therefore, they did not have the power of collective bargaining. They did not have those sorts of things. Now, and again, I'm speaking a little bit, to the side here. There were other police departments who had a union, such as Phoenix has plea, and we were sitting there going, man, why do they have such good benefits? Why do they have such good overtime? Why do they get all these things? The only reason that I was ever informed, or the reason why I should join a union, and again, as an officer, was for if I shot and killed somebody, I would get lawyer coverage. So that is literally the only foundation I had, or understanding that I had, of what a union was. So for the current conservatives out there now, and again, it's shifted a little bit recently, but it has been traditionally that conservatives, i.e. Republicans, have been very anti-union. Democrats have always been traditionally those who are proponents of the unions. So how do you explain this to people, to the conservatives, that the reasons why these unions are necessary?
Well, I want to start by saying one of the things about unions and the unionization movement in this nation is during the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, when the unions were at its most powerful, membership didn't have a political alliance. There was more. I think the number was more than half of the country was under a union contract at one point in this nation. And again, it didn't have a political allegiance one way or the other. It was corporate lobbying and corporate interference that unfortunately made the issue partisan. And then they started throwing around words like communism and socialism, which, as we know, have always kind of been a dirty word in the United States. And
communism is bad politically.
Yes.
Let's get that. Socialism is bad politically. Like I do stand on those pillars and foundations. I believe in our
I
democratic.
tend to agree, but I also, as I've gotten older and as I've gone through this movement, I've realized that just because a political idea is bad doesn't mean they don't get it right once in a while. And so I really think as a nation we should start re-looking at some of these ideas and finding out if any aspect of it works and seeing if maybe we can incorporate that without losing our identity as a nation. I know it's a popular thing to point out, but plenty of nations in Europe, for example, offer much stronger safety nets.
Sure.
While they're smaller countries and more homogenous populations, I do believe that, you know, with the logistical might that the United States has and with our willingness to get to work and put our feet to the grinder, essentially, as we've shown time and time again throughout history, I do believe we can get to a point to where we can offer these stronger social safety nets. And, you know, let's not forget the unions provided a lot of these safety nets we all love and enjoy in the first place, like the 5-day work week, vacation days. That was a big one.
Yeah, like work-life balance a little bit. Sure.
Yep, work-life balance, Labor Day.
Didn't they start the 40-hour
work week? That was another big thing. You know, a lot of these rights that we enjoy as Americans currently, even though still think they should be much stronger, were won off the blood, sweat, and tears, and oftentimes the deaths of strikers and protesters. It was very common not too long ago, not even 100 years ago, for people in our position, organizers, strikers, you know, union men to be beaten, harassed,
right.
murdered.
yeah.
So every time I go out there to continue to fight for this movement, I try to think about what that generation would have done as well, seeing as how they gave their lives to make sure that the people like me can continue on the fight. Because as we continue to industrialize and we continue to revolutionize our society, we must never stop bringing the workers with us. Otherwise, we will get back to a time when it was like the 1910s and 20s, child labor and multiple industrial deaths and no bereavement, no benefits, 90-hour work weeks, working 6 days, only having Sunday morning off. And it's great if you want to choose that life, but I would argue that the vast majority of Americans do not want that life. They want time with their families.
Absolutely.
They want time with their children. They want time to spend in their communities. And I do believe the unions are the way to continue to have that.
Very well said.
Thank you.
Very well said. Now, Brandon, you, like, again, Nick, you do not work for Curaleaf anymore. They opened the door and they said, please leave.
Yeah, we can get into that.
We'll get into that in just a moment. But Brandon, I wanted to get your take on still currently working for Curaleaf, which is a large, what's called multi-state operator within the cannabis space. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it the biggest or one of the biggest?
They're the world's largest. They're even international. They're in Europe, parts of Europe. So we're not the only. They're a global market. We're not the only.
Okay.
They're not just stuck in the U.S.
So how do you balance working for the largest cannabis company in the world, working for a political action committee that wants to continue to drive unionization, and then also being the shop steward between a labor union and the largest cannabis community or cannabis company in the world, and then also one of the first to unionize? How on
do I
earth
balance that?
What is that, like 6 different hats that you're wearing?
Yeah, I don't know how to wear them all at once.
I don't think you can.
No, it's very. I mean, it's a juggling act for sure, but it's well worth it. It's gonna produce some good for the future generations as long as this movement keeps moving forward. So I'm just happy to be a part of it.
That's awesome. And the thing is though, like it was April of 2024, I believe, when we protested.
Oh yeah,
in front of 2023.
23.
Man, it was 2023.
Been that long,
Okay,
yeah.
And I was out there on the lines. I remember I was fresh off of my surgery.
Yep.
So, So I personally have been out there and protested Curaleaf, and now Curaleaf is sitting in my podcast studio.
Yeah, I'm right here.
But I think that that's all part of the thing. That's like we need to strike that balance of workers. Like I believe in capitalism. I want your bosses to make millions of dollars, but I also want them to pay you well.
Yeah, I want a career, not a job. With right now, it's just a revolving door. I see a lot of new employees all the time. We lose a lot of good talent, but I'm hoping with the union being there, with guaranteed wages, this could actually be a career option that people want to be a part of. So it's going to get better.
And the unionization is very new.
Yes, we're like the pioneers.
I love that word.
Yeah.
I love that word.
It's a new territory. But it's going nice. I'm hoping when people look in to see what's going on with us and the other unionized cannabis companies or stores, that they will see, wow, this is worth it. They are getting better because they are united together. This is a good movement. Maybe we should. So I'm hoping it spreads like wildfire.
You said earlier that like inside of your shop that you do have good morale.
Yes.
Has unionization helped with that?
Yeah, the culture in my store is great because of the people, the employees there. So we have great culture. We're all happy to be a part of this family. So it's nice.
How has management received this so far?
Management's fine, and internal management's great with it. I mean, they not great, but we work together.
Okay.
So this gives us a common platform to work on. So, but yeah, everything's nice with management.
That's good. And like I said, fully understand that, it would be disrespectful for me to come on here and say, fuck Curaleaf. No, that's totally disrespectful. Yeah. We need large cannabis companies to employ. We need job creation. We need entrepreneurship. We need capitalism. We need those things. But again, as I've gotten older in life and I've become less and less of a conservative, and I recognize the fact that like they can share a little bit.
Yeah, it's just about sharing and working together. That's all we really want. We want to be valued, and we want to help the company grow, and we want to be a part of that growth. We want to experience that growth. And we're hoping to do that through the union. So,
and it is, it doesn't matter what the company is. It doesn't matter what the job is. If the company pours into its people and trains their people and, gives them good guidance, good education, like you said, you want a career, you don't want a job.
Exactly.
That's just something that some companies just can't seem to figure out.
No, absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about, Nick, about your movement into cannabis, working for Big Cannabis, and then just kind of what transpired there and how you just lit it on fire.
Well, I had been at least one or two dispensaries before Curaleaf, and I started noticing the issues, but I was still very much ingrained in a corporate mindset that if I just stuck it out and didn't make any waves, essentially, that I would hopefully survive the culling and be one of the people brought up into the ivory towers of management.
Right.
And no matter how hard I worked, no matter how many hours I dedicated, no matter how much effort I put into my patients, it just never seemed to be enough. And then I got to Curaleaf, and this was right around when recreational took effect in the state of Arizona.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second. You brought up a good point. This cannabis space in the state of Arizona started specifically as medical. You didn't have customers.
No, we had patients.
You had patients.
And I still, even though there's recreational, and recreational far outpaces the medical program now, I still refer to everybody who walks in and out of the dispensary as a patient. It's always a medicine first to me.
They do that in the store too. We call every customer as a patient, so we still hold on to that mentality, I guess.
Good.
But as recreational hit and I got to Curaleaf, I realized that the industry had rapidly changed overnight. Before, it had been patient-focused care, and everything was about taking care of our patients and making sure they had the right medication and making sure that us as bud tenders and us as cannabis professionals had the right knowledge to be able to provide to these patients, to be able to navigate the different aspects of the medication, the different methods of consumption, the different strains, terpenes, cannabinoids, everything that is what to do with cannabis, essentially. And overnight, it went from that to profit-centered care. And unfortunately, that is the route that the industry has taken. And there were a couple of moves in the store that were made that very much upset me. And I was ready to quit. I was absolutely ready to quit and move on to the next place.
This is when you were at Curaleaf.
This is when I was at Midtown. And I remember I was sitting at my home smoking a joint. I was getting nice and stoned with some Blue Dream, which is one of my favorite strains. Recommend it highly, by the way. Smoking some Blue Dream, and I was just scrolling through my phone, and I happened to stumble across an article. And this article was about an employee named Anissa Kane. Now, Anissa Kane worked at the Gilbert Curaleaf location and had attempted to unionize the store a couple years before our movement started. But unfortunately, she didn't get to the card check phase and was subsequently let go.
What does that mean, the card check phase? I apologize.
So, actually, yeah, let's pause and let me explain how unionizing works. So, the first step to unionizing is you identify an organizer, somebody in the store, a worker organizer who can go in there and talk to their coworkers about this, right? Then once they feel they have enough support from the store, they drop what's called cards. And these cards are authorization cards giving the UFCW access to represent them, right?
Okay.
So historic or federally, you need 30%. 30% of the workforce to sign these cards in order to file a petition with the National Labor Relations Board for a union election. Most unions aren't going to file for anything less than 55, 60%.
30 is that minimum.
Yep.
Okay.
But they want to make sure they're going to win if they're going to file.
Of workers, not management. Of labor, not management.
Whoever is included in the collective bargaining agreement. Because sometimes low-level management is included. It really is not so much the title. It depends on the job duties and descriptions. Okay. So a good rule of thumb is if you have hire and fire ability or disciplinary ability, you can discipline other workers without having to check with people, you are not entitled to unionize, at least under the process that we went under. So once you have that bare minimum, let's say 60%, you file an election with the National Labor Relations Board. And the National Labor Relations Board then holds a meeting and then sets between the company and the union. They notify the company, obviously, that this is going on. And then they set an election date. And during this drive up to the election date, there's a lot of activity. The union's coming in and out and organizing and trying to make sure the workers are all on board and that they stay strong and keeping an eye on the company, because oftentimes companies hire what's called union busters. And these union busters, their only job, this is a real job description, their only job is to go to stores that want to unionize, that the workers have expressed interest in forming this union, which is their right under the National Labor Relations Act, passed in the 1960s, I believe. Right, this is their right. These guys come in and their only job is to convince you not to unionize. That's their only job. They get paid thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars a month to do this.
And they're a company man.
Oh, 110%.
They're paid for by the company.
Yep. What the companies often do is they hire outside consulting firms who are on contract basis. Yes.
Okay.
And like I said, this random people will show up you've never seen before with the authority of corporate and try to convince you every single day unions are bad. You don't want to work in a union. You don't want to be in a union. They'll take your money. They'll make you pay dues. They're not going to give you anything out of it. Of course, they don't point out the collective bargaining agreements and all the benefits you receive and all the different aspects that we try to accommodate for the workers, and the fact that, you know, a CBA in the state of Arizona takes away the at-will aspect of your employment. You would now have to be fired for just cause. But they ignore all that and they union bust. And then leading up to the election, obviously we're doing our best to dispel any myths or any outright lies that the company tries to peddle to the workers. And then the election happens, and it is a secret ballot election held by the United States government. They send down a representative known as a board agent, And that person conducts the election. The people go into their booth. They don't put their names on anything. They just yes or no. And then the government counts it in front of both parties. If the majority of the votes counted are yes, you unionize. If the majority of the votes counted are no, you lost the election.
Okay.
I keep pointing that out because it's a majority of what's counted. So if you only have 3 people vote and 2 of them vote yes for the union, your workforce is now unionized.
Gotcha.
So I always encourage everybody, whether you want it or not, go vote. Have your voice heard. I've always wanted people to have their voices heard. That's why I started this movement in the first place, was to allow the workers in the cannabis industry to have a voice before it became too late. Because as Brandon pointed out earlier, multi-state operators like Curaleaf are positioning themselves to be Walmarts and distribution hubs for cannabis. And they're rapidly getting too big to confront. And so that's why I felt that time, almost 5 years ago now, that starting that movement was very crucial. So back to the story at hand. I was sitting down smoking a joint, and I read the article about her firing and the court case and all that. And I noticed they had the union's name in there, UFCW Local 99. So I sat with it for about 2 days. And then finally, I just busted down and shot him a call. I left a message at the reception desk, and right away, the organizer down there, Mario Gonzalez, he got back to me and wanted to set up a meeting with me. But I was still in kind of an anti-union mindset. I was more pissed off and spiteful and trying to figure out what to do and how I could make my voice heard and how I could possibly affect change, not just for other people, for my family. I want to be in this industry 20 years. So I dodged him and I ghosted him for like 2 months. I mean, we would set up a meeting. I would miss it. I would just lie to him and tell him I wasn't available. And I told him immediately after we started actually having the meetings that, hey, I lied to you about not. I honestly I didn't know. But eventually we were all sitting around, the entire staff. We all went out for breakfast one day at a restaurant called Breakfast Bitch. And we were all sitting around and everybody had a complaint.
Sure.
We were going around the table and everybody had a complaint, and they were all such valid complaints.
Wasn't little piddly stuff.
No. And so at that moment, Mario texted me a reminder, hey, did you still want to schedule something? And so I stepped away from the table and just called him and sat there for an hour, standing maybe 10, 15 feet from the table, just talking to him on the phone.
And real quick, you were a part of all this? Like
No, not yet.
Not yet.
He
Okay.
hadn't gotten there yet.
Gotcha. I apologize. I jumped the gun. I'm sorry.
No, you're good, brother. And then we scheduled a couple more meetings where he went over PowerPoints and stuff and how to essentially do this. But, he made it very clear that nobody had successfully done it in this state yet. And so we were going to be, as Brandon pointed out, the pioneers of this movement for the state of Arizona. And it was a hard fight. Lord knows they threw everything they could at us. Every trick in the book, everything under the sun, union busters, shady tactics. Really? Absolutely. But in the end, when they counted those election votes, we beat them. I believe it was 13 yeses, 6 noes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was the vote count. And so that led us on this journey where we are today. Now we have several locations outside of Curaleaf that have successfully completed the unionization process. Zenleaf Chandler and Local Joint, Sunday Goods Tempe, places like that. True Leaf Magnolia, the first grow in history, in Arizona history to unionize, and first agricultural labor election in, I think, 30 years.
That's amazing.
Yep. Because the National Labor Relations Act is separate from the National Labor Agricultural Act,
Okay.
I believe. I might have the name of that law wrong, but essentially there's 2 separate entities. So we fall under the National Labor Relations Act and the National Labor Relations Board. They fall under the Agricultural Board, which is an entirely different process and different set of rules. That would be the type of work that the Farm Workers Union does, for example. So
what was the outcome of, I forget her name, the young lady from the Gilbert location?
Unfortunately, she did lose her appeal in the DC Court of Appeals.
Okay.
The judge ruled essentially that even though the run up to the firing was messy, that they essentially Curaleaf didn't act out of policy. They would have fired anybody for the same reason.
It was lawful but awful.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's essentially what happened, and they essentially refused to enforce the board's order.
Okay. So, Brandon, you're at Curaleaf, and now you're under the guise of the UFCW 99. That's the correct union that is overseeing all this now.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. And how does that relationship go now? What, as a now unionized shop, what does that look like? How does that flow into the daily, into the day-to-day of working for this company?
I mean, works pretty much the same. It's just now people feel protected. They feel like they can be heard, so they don't have to worry about being terminated or fired for any reason. In fact, since I became the shop steward, everybody comes up to me with questions all the time.
Okay.
So I like that responsibility because I like helping other people. So it's just a lot better working environment, I guess. It's really fresh though. This
is a fresh thing
because
correct?
We had to get our contract.
Okay.
Before your contract, it's like having your foot in the door. Curaleaf can still kind of slam it. You could be decertified depending on what the employees want because everybody wants to be heard. So this entire process felt drawn out, but at the same time, everybody was just keeping people engaged the entire time and reminding them why we're doing this and what it's going to do for us. That was a difficult task, especially after Nick was out of the picture when they fired or when they terminated his employment. So I had to keep that. I had to carry the torch from that point. And we're doing a lot better now.
As new people come in, does that dynamic change? Like say I'm just using numbers here. You have 5 people that leave and then 5 new people come in and those 5 new people don't want to unionize. Does that matter? Like we're already unionized.
I noticed by doing this, nobody steps in the store thinking I want to be a part of the union or not.
Okay.
They make their own observations. So when they come in, they base their decisions on how well Curaleaf treats them, I guess, in that sense. I'm there just to help people, if they're interested. I do introduce myself to the new hires when they come in, so they know that's there. But most people want those protections.
Okay.
So they want.
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, those are very important. Besides the protections, with the contract we have guaranteed wages now. That was one of the biggest struggles going through the contract period because before the contract, because Curaleaf wasn't giving any raises anymore because there was no raise structure.
They didn't have to.
Now we have a raise structure.
Okay.
So there's going to be a mandatory raise every year. So that's a big win for employees that will be there from the start of the contract to when we have to renegotiate a new one. Whoever's there will be making more than most bud tenders or possibly all bud tenders in the state of Arizona. So that's going to be a big deal. That's what people are going to be looking in. I just have to help protect the employees that are there between now and then and help them stay with Curaleaf through that process.
It's one of these things where, again, like you want the company to invest in their people. You want them to want to keep good people around because that's going to keep driving. I total honesty, I said it earlier. I have not had the greatest experience with Curaleaf in the past, and I have driven past. I drive 12 miles out of my way, go right past a Curaleaf. But that's one of these things, as we said in the beginning, or when we were offline, it's like I want to get these misconceptions out there that even I have of a large MSO and how they treat their people. Now, but on that note, though, not every Curaleaf, no worries.
Oh, sorry. shut that off.
We'll be right back. No, just kidding.
And I can answer to at least one thing you said. I know you said that you drive past Curaleaf almost 12 miles.
Should probably go to our Curaleaf.
One of the things that one of the things I've always been firm on is I would never ask a patient to not go to the place that has their medication. So if Curaleaf has your medication, they're the closest. You do not need to drive that far out of your way. There's no boycott in effect. We want you to be able to get your medication. We want you to come see us because at the end of the day, as most bud tenders would agree, we're here for the community. That was the whole point. And, we don't stop taking care of our community just because we're also simultaneously fighting for our respect, professionalism, and rights.
Absolutely valid point that, if you need to get your medicine, you need to get your medicine.
Absolutely.
But as I was saying that, not every Curaleaf is unionized.
No.
So how does that work out? How do the other, if you've had any contact with the other Curaleafs, how do they look at your store? How do you see those stores?
It's really fresh. Like I said, we just got our contract, so we're going to need to take some time to cultivate. I'm so sorry. We're going to need some time to get there for people to look in. It's going to take time, but we occasionally go to other Curaleafs and we engage other Curaleafs just to see how the morale is there. I mean, it just depends. If people need it, they need it. So we're going to, like I said, it's going to take time for people to look in to make that decision.
How do you choose? I'm trying to form my words here. I apologize. When a place wants to unionize, how do you say, we want the UFCW to come in and be our union? How does that process work? Or do they approach you?
I think UFC, maybe Nick would know more about this, but I think UFCW can be the only one in Arizona.
So to answer your question, yes, right now the UFCW is the union to be a part of in the state of Arizona for cannabis. But to answer your question, to how they get involved is they can do a combination of things. They can either reach out directly to us, or as Brandon pointed out, sometimes we like to do what's called probing, where we go to the different stores that are non-union and we go talk to the workers and see what the issues are there and if a union would fit in for them. But it just takes one person to reach out and ask. It takes one person who's willing to dedicate a little time and a little effort to getting it started. And it explodes from there oftentimes. Once you light the fire in one, it usually spreads.
And part of my question is why? Now, again, we're talking about labor unions that have been in effect for decades and decades and decades. So this is law that goes back decades, and this is all fresh to me. So I'm trying to form my question here as to how is it decided upon which union will be the one that is chosen to be a part of?
I believe that is something worked out with the AFL-CIO. All unions operate under a parent, which is essentially the American Federation of Labor.
CIO.
Yeah. It was two former labor organizations that merged into one, and they are essentially the political arm of a lot of the labor unions. I believe the only people who are not, and do not quote me on this, that are a part of that is the Teamsters. Now, the Teamsters can and do represent cannabis workers as well, but I believe they focus more on distribution and delivery drivers, stuff like that. Their presence is much heavier on the East Coast, excuse me.
Yeah, you're talking Jimmy Hoffa stuff.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's where they made their claim to fame, yes, but they because they're not a part of the AFL-CIO, they're not required to focus on certain industries, so they have a lot of different things under their belt.
So, and again, I'm assuming these unions talk to each other and say, we're going to handle this, you handle that, we're going to do this, you do that. I mean, let's be very honest here. All unions have a self-serving interest in and of themselves, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But again, I want those unions to make money to protect you, to create a better product and a better employee for a company that can invest more money into you. Yep. It's a circle. It's a circle of life. I know that sounds dumb.
And that's frankly how the law works, too. The Supreme Court ruled on this a long time ago, that the unions cannot use due money to further political agendas. They can only use it for the benefit of their workers, basically putting it back into union hall and into their members. And so oftentimes what unions do is they'll form a political action committee outside and ask for voluntary contributions on top of that.
So that's where the PACs come in.
Yep.
That's where the lobbying comes in.
Unfortunately, yes. They're lobbying for good causes, but I've never been much of a fan of lobbying, even though I technically am a lobbyist now.
Yeah.
Have you been involved in any lobbying? And I don't mean just with Curaleaf or anything like that, but have you personally been involved, or have you with Curaleaf or with the UFCW or anything like that?
I know with our political
Political Action Committee?
our political action committee, I know that he spearheads that mainly, but I know that we do that with that. Yeah. Not so much with the union. They haven't really called upon me to do such things. So, but I know that when we got our contract, we had to sign for dues. So
Yeah.
I am paying dues.
And can I just make a statement now too? Brandon is the shop steward for Midtown Curaleaf. Neither of us work for the Local 99, and we
Yes.
have no positions of authority. So while we can speak about our experiences and the things like that, I just don't want any of the viewers to get misconstrued with this being an official statement from the UFCW.
Sure.
And same thing with the Political Action Committee. Brandon's hesitant to bring it up. He's a little humble over there, but neither of us, none of the members of the org, including myself, get paid to do what we do politically as well. We do it all volunteer work.
Having been a political activist with Arizona Normal, which is where Nick and I met. Yes.
Yes.
Let's give him a quick shout out.
There you
Arizona
go.
Normal, one of the best political committees, or one of the best political organizations, in the entire state of Arizona and in cannabis space in general. I highly recommend to go check them out, volunteer with them.
Because I was the executive director for Arizona Normal for a bit, for about 18 months. I'm still on the board of directors, and that's not what this podcast is about. It's been turned over to Julie Gunnigal's leadership, and it's phenomenal. But where I'm going with that is lobbying sucks. Lobbying sucks.
Absolutely.
And dealing with and again, this is outside of Curaleaf and the UFCW 99. I'm not saying anything about them. Diving into the swamp of politics, even at the state level, sucks.
Yep. Well, I think one of the problems with the legislators in particular is that oftentimes they forget that we didn't vote them in because of their personality or their political stances, really, or anything of that. We voted them in because we believed that they would listen to us when we tell them to do something. Because at the end of the day, they are our representatives, meaning they work for us,
Public
not
servants.
the other way around. And frankly, I think a lot of America has forgotten that, and it's turned into a reality TV show race where it's who's the most interesting person or who's got the most extreme ideas on one side or the other, and not who has solutions or who's willing to at least put in the work and the effort to find the solutions to fix the problems plaguing our society today. I mean, just one of them, for example, Arizona's running out of water. We're running out of water.
Do you know what the word Arizona means?
No.
Land of Little Spring.
Yes.
That's what Arizona means. We don't have any fucking water here. So we have issues with that.
I think we're in like a level 3 water. Like we are in dire straits with the amount of water we have left, and we're still having arguments over data centers.
Yeah.
And whether or not we should put them in our community. We don't have the water to fund these people. We just don't.
And where we should be funding is agriculture.
Yes.
We should be funding, and again, like diving back into the cannabis space, like if we funded hemp, and then for hemp oils and for hemp, all the good stuff. But again, like we're kind of taking some turns here, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But that's all part of the cannabis space. That's all part of the cannabis world, is dealing with all of these sorts of things. And then how is that going to affect Curaleaf for the next 5 years when they can't grow weed here anymore because we don't have any freaking water?
You have to grow within the state that you operate. So,
Yes.
Which, and again, reschedulization of
oh yeah, that happened with medical. There's talk that they're gonna sometime in June discuss that for recreational too.
Interesting. I haven't heard that yet. So that's interesting.
So, I mean, that's going to help Curaleaf or any cannabis company out massively.
I believe the estimate is most cannabis businesses, especially the MSOs, who quickly get into compliance with the new federal regulations, will see an average of 30 to 40% profit boost, simply because there was a tax code on the books for a long time called 280E, which essentially meant even though we technically view what you're doing as legal, we still need our tax money. But because we view it as illegal, we're going to tax you all the way, like as much as we possibly can. And you're not allowed to write off any business expenses. So while a normal business can write off the operating expenses and the day-to-day and the buildings and the things that they need to operate and get those tax breaks, the cannabis businesses unfortunately could not. Now, the problem with that policy and how it affected Arizona, unfortunately, was the big MSOs like Curaleaf can handle that and can handle that tax hit. But the ma and pa stores, the ones that cared about the industry, the ones that essentially built the foundations of this industry almost a decade ago, or over a decade ago now, were pushed out of the scene simply because they couldn't afford it. It became a race to profit. And that's where companies like Curaleaf came in the picture, where they had big sacks of cash from investors, and they said, hey, let me buy your business.
Yeah.
And they went from having nothing to having 15 locations in the state of Arizona, which is a large percentage of the market, especially in Phoenix.
And that's part of the thing that I said earlier. Like, I want the owners of Curaleaf to make money. I want them to prosper. I want them to expand access of medicine across the state for those who can't get, Arizona has, for those who are unaware of Arizona's landscape, you got Flagstaff, Phoenix, Tucson, and a couple of little cities in between. And then there's expansive places of absolutely nothing, where you have patients who are driving 2 to 3 hours at a time. And again, I want Curaleaf to fill those gaps. I want a cannabis company to have the heart to go and do those things. But at the same time, I don't want them to squeeze out the little guys. It's such a balancing act here.
Well, and to touch on your point about the people driving 2-3 hours, it's also in the state of Arizona, it's very unique because that's a real danger of death. If you break down in that long, expansive, dusty highway, nothing for absolutely miles, and you're broken down in the middle of the day and it's hot, what are you going to do? There's no AC, there's no nothing. It's 128 degrees.
You're also 75 years old. You have health issues. I want to touch on that real quick. And again, we talked earlier about the fact that Curaleaf sees everybody as patients, which I love.
Yes.
I love that. What is obviously not diving into any patient privacy issues or anything like that, but how has the demographic of cannabis users and consumers been over the last, in the most recent times here? How has that changed? How has that evolved?
I've been in the industry for 4 years. I see old people you wouldn't think would use marijuana as medicine. The demographic, it's all over the place. It could be your grandmother. It could be someone like me, like someone young. It's just all over the place when it comes to that.
And I would say that as far as demographics go, the only change I really saw was there was a massive decline in medical patients in the medical program. As soon as recreational hit, a lot of my own patients would tell me they're just not going to renew, because they're not going to pay the $200-300 to get it and possibly lose their gun rights and all these different issues that were attached to it. Not to mention the allotment system, I think we can all agree, probably needs an update.
Very much agreed. And it is so funny on that note. I want to say something on a personal side. Like, I remember, when I moved into the medical side of the house and I got my card and all that, had I been a police officer and I would have pulled over somebody with 2.5 ounces, I'm like, man, this guy's a drug dealer. Look at all these drugs. And now I'm like, fuck, man, that's like a week for my back pain. Like, it's killing me. Like, let's be really honest here. And again, just my personal evolution. But it's one of these things where I'm very fortunate. I am sponsored by Life is Chill. I'm personally sponsored by them now. Life is Chill. Thank you. No, I'm just kidding. But where I'm going with that is that they have taken a deep dive into educating the elderly population. And I'm just going off on a whim here. It's one of these things where I have not seen a dispensary do a good job personally of bringing in the elderly patients. And if we take a look back, they're the original hippies. They're the original stoners. They're the original ones who got into this movement back in the 60s and all that, and now they have been forgotten. So I'm just taking a little sidestep here and just wanted to say that it's been so refreshing to I'm a part of their modern wellness I screw this up every time. I'm sorry, Life is Chill. Modern Wellness Expo for the elderly, and to go and see now educated elderly patients and going and getting their medicine. And the one thing that I have noticed is that you walk into a dispensary sometimes and it's not friendly. And I don't mean unfriendly. It just like they're not like
feels like a prison. It doesn't feel like a dispensary. White walls, white everything, nothing on the walls. The bud tenders and everybody's all quiet. The patients even seem a little down half the times.
Right, it's
and
weed.
Again, it's the corporatization of weed. That's where the issue really evolved, and a lot of people are now starting to accept the fact that this is kind of like a Walgreens or a Walmart. Whereas I remember when we first switched over to recreational, I mean, yeah, we had the occasional patient that treated us, like they would a fast food worker, right? And not to disparage fast food workers in any way, shape, or form. You should treat them with the utmost respect at all times. But
if you're working, you should be respected.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All work is good work.
It's no secret that in food service, you often deal with a lot of abrasive customers. And so you get the occasional customer like that, or occasional patient like that at the dispensaries, but oftentimes when recreational first hit, people were so excited. I mean, a lot of them never thought they'd see this in their lifetime.
Interesting perspective.
And within a year or two, the honeymoon phase had worn off, and that's where the dispensaries really started declining. Another aspect was patient and bud tender education. Companies like Curaleaf will just absolutely refuse to educate their bud tenders when it comes to the different products and the different types of consumption, the different cannabinoids and terpenes. Whereas when I first started in the industry, that was like a mandatory thing. Once every couple of weeks, a new brand's coming in and giving you an hour-and-a-half presentation on the 3 different edible products that they offered. They spin it to an hour and a half, too, which is the crazy part. For 3 bags of edibles. But it was awesome because you got every aspect of the knowledge you needed to then be able to educate your patients, which is what people like the elderly patients need. They don't just need to get stoned. They need the education, the component behind it. I mean, they need someone to tell them, hey, do you want sleep? You don't need a high THC, high potency strain. You need a low THC indica because oftentimes low THC indicas are high in CBN. And CBN is the component in cannabis that puts you to sleep.
And it is a difficult balance to where you have recreational and medical at the same time here, where you have, and again, I'm not disrespecting anybody, just the way it is. You got a 22-year-old walking in that just wants to get high. Yep. Now, I'm fine with that. I don't care. But then you've got a 40, 50, 60-year-old.
Has pain.
Exactly. And they're standing next to each other. And there's a bud tender who, and I'm not speaking ill of Curaleaf in any way, shape, or form. I'm also saying that for the Curaleaf folks that like, I'll give a personal message here about a different company, but like it's intimidating to the older person. Yep. It's intimidating, the young kids, bouncing around happy and all that good stuff, as they should be, because they're 22 years old and life has not wrecked them yet. No. But it's the sort of thing where it's pouring the education into the bud tenders has been lacking in every dispensary, particularly medically. Has that changed at all within the Curaleaf community?
So Nick's right. Earlier on in this aspect, they used to give us extensive training on the cannabinoids, the different effects that sativa has versus indica, how to probe customers, but that I don't really see much of that training anymore.
Okay.
I see a lot of product-based training.
So is that a dispensary issue or a brand issue?
I think it's that's a tough one to put your finger on, because now that corporatization, as Nick would put it, is coming into place, a lot of these products are being pushed based on how cool it looks, or like just it's not really addressing customers' needs in that sense with the training. The product itself can, if the bud tender themselves know the need of the customer and could pair it with the product. Like I said, I've been in the industry 4 years, but I see a lot of new people come in, and I see a lot of good talent leave. It just depends who those new bud tenders work with, or those sales associates, as we're called now. So it's just marketing, I think, is changing a lot of things in the cannabis industry.
And I would point out that I have spoken to a number of brand ambassadors and different table reps and things like that for different brands. And from what I hear pretty much across the board is a lot of these MSOs are just not wanting to have these trainings anymore. That the vendors will offer them, because of course the vendors want to offer them. They want their product to be sold over the other products. And I'm not going to do that unless I know this product's better than that one. But they oftentimes what I hear is that they're just absolutely told no, and that the most that they can do is go set up in the hallway or set up on the corner of the sales floor for an hour or two, and essentially cost everybody who walks by to ask them if they bought one of their products.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's a weird system to me. It is a weird system to me. It's a weird setup.
I have stopped going to all Arizona-based cannabis events, most of them, except for Arizona Normal meetings. Sorry, little plugs here. But I've stopped going to them because it's the same thing over and over. Get some attractive girls in some bikinis to hand out some products that's probably expired and been sitting for the last 2 years. That doesn't help the industry at all. That doesn't help anything in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, man. I mean, I can tell you, as having worked for multiple cannabis companies over the past close to 7 years now, and being considered one of those industry veterans, one of the few left, I can tell you, I mean, I've seen the cost sheet that is associated with some of these products, the everyday products that we buy, and the profit margins on them, on some of them, are 800-900%. I mean, on average, from what I noticed, for a regular pre-roll, it takes a company roughly $1 to make.
Okay.
And then they go sell it for 10. It's a 900% profit increase, and the product's not good.
Right.
Oftentimes they're using the trim and the leftover stuff that they couldn't put in an eighth, the shake and whatnot, and they're throwing that to a pre-roll and charging you premium. We've had numerous discussions with other allies in the space about the RSO problem in the valley right now, where a lot of places have stopped doing strain-specific RSOs, and there are a lot of medical patients out there who require specific strains and specific cannabinoids and terpenes in order for the RSO to be truly effective. Rick Simpson oil, by the way, to truly be effective for them. And the dispensaries are moving away from that because, again, the profit margin isn't there. It's easier to mix a bunch of somewhat passable stock together and turn that into RSO instead of growing one specific section just for Blue Dream, one specific section for Sunday Driver, one specific section for Grape OG. In fact, one of the few places I know of that still does strain-specific RSO is Drip. Shout out to them, dude. You guys are doing great.
I'm a big fan of them. And
big fan of Drip.
And this is where a space that I'm actually truly not very well versed in is caretakers.
Yep.
Caregivers. Again, I can't even begin to speak specifically, even though I was the executive director of Arizona Normal for a while. The caregiver program to me is like, it's a gray area, but also should have been boosted much more. It doesn't help the dispensaries, and unfortunately, but it does help the patients. And as we said before, like the reason why there is weed in the state of Arizona, the reason why there is legal weed in the state of Arizona and across the country is because it was built on the backs of medical patients, people with disabilities, and they have just been forgotten. Again, I what I'm saying is I'm not slamming Curaleaf, I'm not slamming Zenleaf, I'm not slamming anybody. Yeah. These are just blanket statements.
Absolutely.
So when your Curaleaf people watch this, they're like, oh no, that's not what I'm saying at all. But it's just been so many forgotten people. And there's so many forgotten things that have happened because, again, unfortunately, a lot of it's just turned to profit.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think how I would describe it is the cannabis industry has lost its humanity. It's lost the thing that made us unique from every other industry that I believe currently exists, was that we were only there for the people. We're there for the community. We had to fight 100+ year prohibition. There are men and women who are in prison for the rest of their lives. There are men and women who have died behind those bars to make sure that we can stand here, we can sit here today and have this conversation and smoke a joint, and I don't have to worry about the SWAT team rolling up and kicking down your door. I don't have to worry about getting pulled over, a joint being in my car, and going to prison for 10 years. And there are men and women who have died for this right. And so I take personal offense to the companies that continue to stomp on that, because this culture meant a lot to me, and I know it meant a lot to basically everybody in it. and watching it get degraded over time has affected all of us, whether we want to speak on it or not. And that's one of the things that convinced me to start stepping up and start speaking out and start getting involved, was because bad men can only do bad things if good men step up and do nothing. Don't step up and do something would be the better term, I think.
You mentioned something, Nick, that really hits close to my heart personally, is that I've kicked down those doors.
Yep. No, absolutely.
I've put people in prison. And the one thing that I have now is I have the respect and I have the community of the law enforcement to listen to me, to hear these stories, to hear two gentlemen sitting here with care and compassion and love for their careers, for their patients, for the 22-year-old kid that wants to come in and get stoned, and to deliver this plant to these people that don't want to ruin their lives with alcohol, that don't want to, who are undiagnosed in something and trying to treat something mentally, and they use the plant because it helps them.
Yep.
And I take this part seriously because the tide is turning. The world is changing in this regard, and they're listening now, and law enforcement is listening now. And this is something that we need to steward in a way. We're not sitting around smoking joints, man, getting stoned, man. That's the misconception.
That stereotype.
Right. And then that's part of the thing where, like, we have an ethical and a moral responsibility now to talk about this in a way that is of care and of compassion and of love. And again, like, you can be corporate and you can still do those things and provide it. And I'm glad that you pointed that out, because it's one of these things where, I did my job to the best of my ability, but at the same time, those are very true realities that are happening to this day. And
you did your job as you should have. It wasn't your fault that, before you came around, there were 60, 70 years of this prohibition beforehand. This was the world we were brought up in. This was the DARE program. Yep. This was Nancy Reagan's Just Say No. And, thankfully, good men and women did not give up. They fought, and they continued to fight, and they continue to fight to this day. We talked about an organization known as Arizona Normal earlier. I volunteer with them all the time because they continue to fight the good fight. No matter what happens, they're still there. They didn't start giving up because recreational hit the state, or they didn't give up when rescheduling hit, because rescheduling is not an end to the prohibition. It is simply a lessering of the offenses. But frankly, we shouldn't stop until there's full legalization across the country, from sea to shining sea, as well as Alaska and Hawaii.
Yeah. We'll count them in.
Absolutely.
No, those are very good points. We've gone a lot of different directions, and like I said, we've talked about a lot of different things. And I just want to get a personal story from you, Brandon, if you wouldn't mind. What led you down the path of cannabis?
What led me? Well, I've been smoking since I was 16 until it was legalized, and I didn't have to fear being in trouble anymore. Right. I used to work in the mortgage industry in a different corporate setting, so that was.
So wait a minute, you smoked weed and you had a professional job?
Yeah.
No, that you can't do that, man. You got to be a loser on the street.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to point, is that, like, we can be professionals.
Yeah.
So, but please continue. I was just joking. I had asked you the question about, Brandon, about just what kind of led down the path of you using cannabis. And I want to preface it before you answer that question again. I was very fortunate and lucky that I was able to have Andrew D'Angelo on my podcast. If you're familiar with him, he's been an advocate in the cannabis space for forever. One of the things he talked about with this plant is that those who go against the plant and are the prohibitionists and all that don't have a relationship with the plant. And I was like, wow, it's pretty powerful. Like, I really liked the way he said that. And even though some people may advocate for it and be for it, even then they still don't have a relationship with the plant. So that was kind of my genesis in asking you the question as to what is your relationship with the plant, and what led you down the path of using.
I was young though. I was 16.
Sure,
I got into it younger. Later in life, there was more of a medicinal use, because there was a period where I actually quit smoking weed for like a year or two. I was it was because I started seeing a doctor I was getting anxiety attacks.
Okay.
And I was having issues. So I started taking a psych med of some sort. And I didn't like it at all. So I eventually, my doctor still wanted me to continue down that path and use that. And I was like, dude, I don't like how I feel like a zombie. I don't like this. So then I weaned myself off. I stopped seeing that doctor and I started smoking weed again. And I was a lot happier. I was a lot less stressed. So that's basically my marijuana usage up until now.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And that's one of these things where, like I said, when you have a relationship with the plant, you can advocate for the plant and be like, this is why I use it. I don't use it just to get high, man. I use it for whatever. And that's a hard pill for a lot of conservatives to swallow. You're just medicating yourself. Well, for fuck's sake, man, you're medicating yourself every day with Jack Daniels.
Yep.
Shut up. And that's
Oxycontin,
or Oxycontin, or all
something of that nature,
or whatever the case is. No, you're good.
It's interesting you say that too, because a lot of the customer base that comes in the store, there's a nice portion that are trying to quit drinking, and they open up to me about that, and they're trying to use marijuana in place of that. And I see a lot of those same customers continually come in and use marijuana. Patients, yes. Do I say customer?
You did. That's all right.
Well, patients. But I see a lot of them switch over, and that helps them out for their medicinal purposes. So, yeah, there's a lot of power with the plant. Yeah,
there is a lot of power with the plant, and that is something that I'll share my story in just a moment. But I want to hear Nick's story on that as well. That too many people don't understand. Too many people don't comprehend. And again, on the conservative side and the prohibitionist side, don't understand that. So they're totally fine with whatever medication that you just said. You were prescribed the medication, you didn't like the medication, you told your doctor you didn't like the medication, and the doctor said, keep using the medication.
Yeah, it was not helpful at all.
If it's not helpful, but they're getting paid by pharmaceutical company X to peddle pills. I'm very anti-pharmaceutical. I'm pharmaceutical when appropriate. When appropriate. But yeah, that's a perfect example of like, why are we continuing to use that when you could use this and lead a productive? As we've already discovered, we're not just bums sitting on a street corner drinking out of a can.
No, with our bongs sitting on the corner. No, it's not like that.
Right. Nick, if I may ask, what led you down the path of using cannabis? What was your genesis of the relationship with cannabis?
So I've always had an issue with drugs in my life. When I was about 11, I developed an addiction to methamphetamine. I grew up in the far West Valley, and at that time, meth was all the rage. And when I was about 14, I was removed from my home by the state of Arizona and became a ward of the state. So I ended up in facilities like Canyon State Academy, used to be Arizona Boys Ranch, ended up in group homes like Powerhouse, New Horizons, places like that. And then when I got out of the system, because I did age out of the system, I decided to join the Army. It's something that I've wanted to do my entire life. And very quickly, I developed an addiction to alcohol.
Welcome to the military.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I took it to the extreme and ended up going AWOL, and was subsequently thrown out of the Army with an other than honorable discharge for AWOL/desertion. That was a huge, huge blow to me. That is still a weight that I carry to this day, that I struggle to deal with, Lord knows, because that's all I ever wanted to do with my life. And the shame and the guilt and the weight of it did not help at first with the alcoholism, but very quickly I decided that I wasn't going to have another job. That was the only way I could repay my brothers and sisters for the mistake I made. And so close to 10 years ago, I stopped drinking entirely and started focusing on cannabis. And cannabis kind of helped save my life. It helped get me off the alcohol and get me on a substance that wasn't, a psych med or something for an SMI or something of that nature. It was just cannabis. And it worked for me, and it allowed me to grow and be a professional and grow as a man and as a human being, frankly, because at that time, looking back, I was still a child. The system does a lot, but it doesn't teach you how to be a man. It doesn't teach you how to be an adult. That you have to learn by getting beaten. That you have to learn by life kicking you in the ass a couple of times and really, really driving home that lesson before you realize, oh, the world's not all hugs and kisses and kind words and free programs, and the world can be a cold, dark place. And if we don't all band together as human beings and try to make it a little less cold and a little less dark, if not for us, then the generation after us, for our kids, for our kids' kids, for the future of our nation, then what are we doing? You know? And it was ideas like that that solidified my journey and kind of made me who I am today.
I have had some revelations here in the past few weeks. And one of those revelations was that my first love was alcohol. And I've learned that with other people because she was there for me.
Yep.
She was there for me in my dark times and all that good stuff. And I used her to numb the pain and all that. And so, Nick, you sharing that story right there, first of all, it takes a lot of courage to say that on a podcast that's going to be seen
Yeah.
and out there in the ether of the world. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Secondly, it led you to here.
Yes.
It led you to this place, this advocacy, this relationship with the plant, the ability to speak on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves.
Yes, and it was a hell of a journey, frankly, and it took a lot of soul searching. It took a lot of mistakes. I mean, I often say, America to me means it's the land of second chances. America is the land of second chances, and that's why that is the one thing that I believe sets us apart from every other nation is we are one of the only nations where you can make as many mistakes as a man like me has and still find a way to move forward, still find a way to essentially pick yourself up by your bootstraps. And that's why I like unions so much, because I wasn't just picking myself up by the bootstraps. I was tying my bootlaces to the guy next to me. So when I picked it up and he picked it up a little bit, the whole chain moved up at the same time, and thereby affecting change across the entire industry with something as simple as a union movement. I mean, in 10, 15 years, we're not going to be talking about the one or two stores we have. We're going to be talking about how the union increased wages across the entire industry, because these companies are not going to have to compete, you know. They're now going to have to raise up the benefits and the working conditions. So thereby, as a lot of people like to point out, trickle-down economics. It starts with one and it bleeds out to the others.
A rising tide raises all boats.
Yes.
And it's a very difficult thing to just pick yourself up by the bootstraps. That term's been used a million times, but you have to you have to move out of your own way.
Yep.
You have to stop seeing yourself as a victim.
Yep.
You have to make a conscious decision. You said for a man, second chances for a man like you who's made the mistakes that you've made, or a man like me, or a man like you, or a woman like that person, or a woman or a man or whatever. We've all made trillions of mistakes throughout our lives. We make mistakes every single day. And I want to share that, like, that's one of the things that cannabis allowed me to release some of the things that I had dealt with in my previous career to be able to continue to move forward. And one of the things is, like I said, we have taken a whirlwind of a ride today regarding unionization and corporatization and just all of it. And it all ties together, and it's all the pneuma, and it's all the spirit of what all this is in this one. And again, like, we can sit here and show the stories of the care and the compassion and love and wanting to have better employees and all that sort of stuff. And it's all part of what this story is and what cannabis is. Yeah. That we can come from all different walks of life and sit together and have a conversation. That's the whole point. It's the beauty of it all. And I love that. And I love that about cannabis. And I love that about when you get to the core of what the cannabis community is, like, not the corporatization, not all that good stuff, but of the people. When you get to that core of what the people are, it's love. And it's that spirit of wanting to be better.
Yep.
It's that spirit of not wanting to be a victim anymore.
And looking towards the future and having hope, I think, as well. You know, a lot of people think we're just doing this for ourselves, but it's not just us. In a decade or two, this is going to be our kids running this industry. It's going to be our kids' kids. This is going to be looked at like a regular industry. It's still kind of, you know, there's still some misconceptions and there's still some misinformation out there.
Absolutely.
And things like that. And obviously there's still a good portion of the population who lived under the DARE program and Nancy Reagan's Say No and the war on drugs and still have a negative opinion of cannabis. But give it maybe 1 maybe 2 generations. And I truly believe that, again, we're going to look back at this and go, wow, that was crazy. The history book's going to look back at this and go, that was a wild time to be alive. And so we're not just doing this for us, we're doing this for our kids. We want our kids and our kids' kids and our kids' kids' kids to be able to succeed in an industry we didn't even know was possible 20 years ago.
I want to add to that, though. The reality is that we have to always recognize the bad with the good.
Yep.
Cannabis is not for everybody.
No.
There are those who should not use cannabis. There are those who are psychologically fragile. And this ties into the whole cannabis gives psychosis. Well, actually, that person was predisposed, and there's lots of underlying factors and all that. Pushing my own podcast here, I did a whole entire series on, does cannabis make you dumb? The research says absolutely not. No, it doesn't. And I gave a whole breakdown. But where I'm going with that is that some mother somewhere lost their child to cannabis.
Yep.
But they didn't lose their child to cannabis. They lost it to addiction.
Yes.
Whether that addiction is heroin, cocaine, meth, whatever the case is, it's addiction.
Oh, we can go even further than that. I mean, gambling addictions, spending addictions. If it is something that can provide euphoria, provide pleasure, provide that dopamine hit, a human being will find a way to overdo it. And so you can't just blame the plant, because at the end of the day, we all know that the plant doesn't have any physical dependencies on it. Theoretically, you would need more than you could ever possibly consume in a lifetime to overdose. It's one of the safest substances we currently have access to as human beings, and it's also one of the most demonized substances, which is a wild coin to look at. You get the two sides.
And it goes back to the back in the 1920s and 30s, the corporatization of forestation, and then Harry Anslinger, and then going back to all that. And it was held down. I mean, you can go back to the 1940s with the LaGuardia report. Man, we're doing some deep diving here. But it's the sort of thing where, like, again, we need to honor those who did not have a good relationship with it. And there's a mother out there and a father out there that are weeping for their child that was lost to addiction. And again, unfortunately, their addiction was to cannabis, which led them down the path of whatever the case may be, led them down the path of misusing a substance, and, through no fault of their own addiction. So I said, I just want to always make sure that we show the good with the bad. Speaking of addiction.
Yes.
I'm just talking about tobacco. I'm fucking with you. No, but we need to honor those that have come before. We need to honor those that have fought, that are fighting this fight, and for what it is, and for now have a relationship with the plant, like I said, to be able to sit here and have a conversation about, to eloquently speak. And like I said, there's going to be a ton of conservatives, because my audience is a lot of conservatives that are going to see this, and they're going to see, like, oh, it's not just pot smoking hippies, which I love. I love pot smoking hippies. I don't give a shit about that.
I think the hippies changing.
Absolutely.
It's evolving. So, and especially with that negative stigma going away, like we were discussing earlier, there's a wide demographic of customer usage. Like, it could be your grandmother. There's just, the age group is not limited to one set. It's all over the place. So I think my dad uses now, so and it helps him, and it helped him quit alcoholism too. So it's a helpful tool. It's a medication, like we were saying.
It's a tool. It's a medicine.
Well, yeah. And the people who built corporate America as we know it today were the same people who held Woodstock, the same people who launched the Summer of Love revolution back in the 70s. These are the same people, and you got to remind them of who they are and where they came from. We all get distracted in our daily lives by the illusion we have of choice. We have all these luxuries around us, and they make us believe that we are free, and that we are free from influence. But the truth of the matter is, they're just there to distract us from the people who are actually pulling the strings from behind the scenes, and who are trying to continue to trample on the American people. And cannabis is one really good example of that. The will of the American people overwhelmingly is to legalize it, yet it's still not legalized. The federal government has just acknowledged that there is medical properties to the plant, yet it's still not legalized. There are a lot of issues behind the scenes that need to be worked on, and
Well, as long
Like I
as it
said, I'm
brings
just-
in money, the more money it brings in, the closer to legalization it will get.
Well, I also think there are a lot of good men and women. You know, me and AJ have both met a lot of these people in the space that are continuing to fight the good fight. And one day I believe we're going to see legalization across the nation. And, you know, 20, 30 years, we're all going to sit back and laugh at the fight we had to fight.
The sad part that really, really pisses me off is that I have smoked with Arizona congressmen that are Republicans
Yep.
that will, I'm looking directly at the camera to make this point, that will never, ever, ever, ever admit the fact that they use cannabis because of the stigma.
Yep.
And they have a little R next to their name. I don't want to go down the political rabbit hole, but I want to thank you both gentlemen for sharing your stories. I want to finish with one thing, Brandon, and that's this. Customer walks into a dispensary. They've never walked into a dispensary before. What are some tips, some tricks, some advice that you would give to somebody brand new to the plant, brand new to a dispensary? What can they do to maximize their experience?
It's about asking those questions, about trying to figure out how the customer wants to feel, what they're trying to ail or help. Once you establish that, then you're kind of, I like to let my customers know I'm going to be your guide today. I'm going to help you find what suits you. But yeah, asking the right questions and then showing them and piecing the product together. And one way that you know that you did a good job as a bud tender is they come back and they want to deal directly with you. You know you did what you needed to, and then they'll be happy to deal with you again. So just asking the right questions.
From the patient perspective, what should they be doing?
What should they be doing?
What should they be doing? How should they be approaching a dispensary?
I mean, I don't know of non-biased, I guess, not with no negative, just being open to the experience and then seeing if it fits them. Because sometimes it doesn't fit everybody. Yep. It's not meant for everybody. It should be there for those who need it or want it. So you establish that through usually the first or second interaction. But yeah, just being open-minded. So I think the bud tender, it's important for that bud tender to gauge that, how the customer's feeling too. You got to be able to read people too, to see where they're at, to be more effective in that interaction.
Awesome.
Absolutely. I would also advise that, the old methods often work the best for new patients coming in. Make sure you keep a strain journal, things like that. But don't be afraid to experiment and try new things. Also understand that while the industry is currently lacking education, the bud tenders are still the closest to an expert you're going to find in the plant. And so you should always be willing to rely on the bud tenders and their knowledge of the different strains and the different products on the shelves in order to give you a decent recommendation. Now, that's not always going to happen, but I would argue that the majority of the time you will get an awesome recommendation, and you'll get that professional courtesy that you deserve.
Gentlemen, thank you so freaking much for today, and the knowledge and the fight and the sticking with it and just going through hell and back to want better for your coworkers and for the industry as a whole. I thank you both so very much for this experience. This has been awesome.
I appreciate the time.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.